of the dialog box, click on this generate button, and you can choose what kind of password to generate. So basically you can select whether you want alphabets, numbers, special characters, uppercase, lowercase, how long should be the password, and things like that. So imagine I have generated a password like the following. Let me show you the password. So how can you actually crack this password? It is so random. It has so many random characters, random combination, that number one, you will never be able to remember the password. But the good news is that even brute force password cracking tools will find it very difficult to crack such a password. So it may actually be a good idea to use such a password. So I save this, and now if you notice, it's been added as an entry into the keep-pass-x software. So next time I want to log into my Facebook account, I can right click on this Facebook entry and I can select copy password to clipboard. Copy password to clipboard. And as soon as I copy it, I can go ahead and paste it anywhere I want. And the password will get pasted. So I don't need to remember the passwords. I can generate much tougher passwords so that dictionary-based attacks, brute force attacks will no longer work against my account. So, like I said again, ideally you should not use password managers. But if you don't really have any other choice, if you don't really have any other option, if you find it very difficult to remember the passwords, then I would say that you can go ahead and use keep-pass-x. Or you have another password manager called Clippers, which is also pretty good. So along with keep-pass-x, you have Clippers. And then you have keep-pass.info. Keep-pass.info. So these are all password managers that you can actually use on your mobile phone or on your computer or even on the web to make the job of remembering passwords much better. So let's quickly move on to another type of attack that is commonly used to crack passwords. And it is an attack known as the meet in the middle attack. Meet in the middle attack. So brute force password cracking, as you know, takes a very long time. And even though you have distributed network attacks that reduce the amount of time it takes to crack passwords using brute force, it still takes a little bit amount of time. So to further reduce it, there is something known as a meet in middle attack. Usually to convert some unencrypted plain text into its encrypted value, some function is executed on it. So basically encrypted password is equal to plain text multiplied by some kind of function. Or encrypted value is equal to plain text multiplied by some key. We've already seen how easy it is to break this using various brute force kind of attacks. In order to improve security, an obvious choice would be to use two independent different functions. That is, if you remember key stretching, where you encrypted the password twice. So if you look at this formula, it says that the final encrypted password or value is equal to, you take the plain text password, do some hash on it or multiply it by some key, and whatever encrypted password you get, you again encrypt it using a second key. That will give you the final encrypted value. Now, if we were to use brute force in this particular case, then to crack the above type of encryption will take a very large number of attempts, which would be much higher than if there was no key stretching that was done. So it means that two-key encryption algorithm is definitely much more secure than using only one key encryption algorithm. So let's assume that you are a criminal and you come across an encryption algorithm where a two-key encryption algorithm is being used. So in such a case, I would highly recommend that you think about using a meet in the middle attack. In the meet in the middle attack, a two-key encryption algorithm is attacked from both sides using brute force. The attacker tries to encrypt the plaintext using different keys to get an intermediate encrypted value. Simultaneously, the attacker also tries to decrypt the encrypted value using different keys to get an intermediate encrypted value. For whichever case the intermediate values of the two attempts matches, it is highly likely that the key used to encrypt the plaintext and the key used to decrypt the encrypted value are the two keys of the two-key encryption algorithm being used by the victim. Such an attack is commonly used to crack two-key encryption algorithms like double DES, two-fish, AES, and so on. So the meet in the middle attack, generally if key stretching has been used, where more than one key is being used, or the password has been encrypted more than once using two different hash algorithms or two different keys, you attack the algorithm using brute force from both ends, from the plaintext end and also from the final encrypted password end. And then you match the intermediate password. And if they match, then you have successfully managed to crack the password. One last topic that I wanted to cover in the password cracking lecture is something known as HTTP referrer spoofing, which allows you to bypass authentication on various websites. Now, if you really think about password cracking, why do you actually want to crack the password of a network or of an account or of a file? The main purpose is to bypass authentication so that you can access the data or access the system that is behind the password, right? So that is why HTTP referrer spoofing is actually very relevant to the topic of password cracking. See, whenever your browser wants to access a particular website, it uses the HTTP protocol. The full form of HTTP is Hypertext Transfer Protocol. So imagine that I have a website, and on that website there's a members only page. So normally if you come to my website, you will see the home page, which is the login page. In that login page, you have to enter the username and password. The username password is sent to me. My website will check the username password, authenticate the username password, and then give you access to the members page, right? So that's typically what normally happens in a website. So let me read from this PowerPoint slide, so it's actually helpful for all of you to understand this. The header of every HTTP request has something known as the referrer field. I repeat, the header of every HTTP request has something known as the referrer field that represents where the user has come from. So the HTTP referrer field basically represents the previous page that the user was on before coming to the current page. So typically if the user first comes to the home page of my website, the login, that is the login page, and then goes to the members page, then on the members page, the HTTP referrer becomes the login page. So how are the HTTP request referrers used for authentication? Step number 1. The user will go to the login page, let's call it login.asp of my website, for example, and then the user will enter the username and password and click on the login button. After the authentication, the user is taken to the members only page, let's call it members.asp. In step number 2, what happens is, if somebody tries to directly type the URL of the members.asp page, then what will happen is technically they should be directly able to access the members only page without authentication or without entering the username and password. So to prevent that from happening, HTTP referrer authentication is used. So the members only page will have that HTTP referrer authentication where it will check the HTTP referrer of every user and verify that the user has actually come from the login page or not. So on the members.asp page, they will always check whether the previous page that the user was on was login.asp or not. And if it was not login.asp, then the user is disconnected and the user is not allowed to access that particular page. So that is what HTTP referrer authentication is all about. So the question here is, how can a criminal bypass the HTTP referrer authentication mechanism? So this is where HTTP referrer spoofing comes into the picture. What exactly is HTTP referrer spoofing and how can you spoof your HTTP referrer? HTTP referrer spoofing is a technique of changing the HTTP referrer information and pretending to have come from some other page so that the website gets fooled into giving you access to the members only page. So typically, if you first come to login.asp, you need to enter username and password. If the username and password is correct, then you are sent to members.asp page. On members.asp page, they will check your HTTP referrer to check whether the previous page that you were on is login.asp or not. If it is not, you are disconnected. If it is, then you are allowed to access the page. So what if I, as a criminal, in my browser, I directly type members.asp, even though I never went to login.asp. So then members.asp, the website will check my HTTP referrer, and my HTTP referrer will not be login.asp. As a result, I'll be disconnected. So to prevent getting disconnected, I'm going to spoof my HTTP referrer, and I'll pretend that my HTTP referrer or the previous page that I was on is actually login.asp. Now there are various browser add-ons on browser extensions or browser apps which are available for Mozilla Firefox browser that allow you to change the HTTP request header referrer to anything of your choice. For example, there is one app which I like to recommend to all of you. It is called Ref Control. Ref Control. Now, Ref Control app basically allows you to change your HTTP referrer to anything of your choice. So if you look at the options, the action is, and under the action field, you can choose a normal referrer, which means the actual referrer will be displayed. Or you can choose to block the referrer, or you can spoof it, or you can customize it to anything of your choice. So by changing the HTTP referrer information, you are actually making it very difficult for the website that is using HTTP referrer authentication to check or to validate or to verify whether you actually came from the login.asp page or not. So that is what HTTP referrer spoofing is all about. There's another very interesting website. This website, I think by now you would have seen 3-4 times already. It is the Hide My Ass website. HideMyAss.com has something called anonymous referrer. It allows you to link to websites anonymously by hiding your referrer fingerprint. So if you don't want your information to be revealed when you're linking, say, your blog or your website to a third-party web page or website, then you can use the anonymous referrer on HideMyAss.com to anonymize a link so that the HTTP referrer information will not show your website when users click on the link on your website to visit that third-party website. So you could actually use this as well to just make life of your users a little bit more private and a little bit more anonymous. So on that note, we have maybe 5 or 6 minutes left. But before I wrap up the lecture, I wanted to quickly do a recap. So over the last few lectures, we have discussed a large variety of different password cracking techniques. We have discussed how to crack pretty much all kinds of passwords. In the previous lecture, we learned how to crack. We started with BIOS passwords. We moved on to file and document type passwords. Then we discussed passwords that are saved in your browsers, how to crack them, and how to crack the master password of your Mozilla Firefox browser. Then we discuss how to crack instant messenger passwords like MSN Messenger, Yahoo Messenger, AOL Messenger. Then we discussed Google passwords that are saved in Google Hangout or Google Talk. Then Skype passwords, Apple passwords as well. And then we started discussing various hash algorithms that are commonly used to securely save passwords. So we discussed MD5 hash. We discussed how to crack MD5 hash using rainbow table attacks. Then we ended up discussing salting, how salting improves security. Then we discussed key stretching as well. And then we started discussing SAM files and how Windows passwords can be cracked. And then in today's lecture, we started with the SAM file. Then we discuss online attacks against the SAM file, where you can use pgdump7 and fgdump to dump the password hashes from the memory. And then you can crack them using Cain-enable, John the Ripper, and other tools. Then we discuss offline attacks, where you can create a bootable CD or pen drive of tools like opcrack, PC login now, hundreds of other tools, conboot and so on, to crack the Windows login password. We also then discuss USB hacking and CD hacking. Then we discuss syskey, which is a great security feature that makes it harder for criminals to crack into your Windows system. Then we also discuss disk encryption and other security features that you can implement to make it harder for the criminal to hack into your Windows account, and then or Windows system. And then we've kind of switched to network passwords, how you can actually crack any kind of network password like POP accounts, HTTP, SQL password, and so on. And then within that we discuss brute force. Then we discuss parallel brute force like THC, Hydra, and Medusa. And then we actually even discuss distributed network attacks, where you can use up to 2,500 different computers on a LAN to simultaneously execute a brute force attack against one password. So imagine the reduction of time that it results in. Then we ended up discussing CAPTCHA. We discussed some ways in which you can bypass CAPTCHA as well. And then we went on to discuss two-step authentication and how that's a great security feature. We discussed password managers and the issues and the benefits and the problems associated with password managers. And then we ended up discussing how to attack key stretch, when key stretching is used, how to attack it from both sides, and how to execute a meet in the middle attack. And then eventually we discuss how you can spoof your HTTP referrer when you are visiting a website that is checking your HTTP referrer field to make sure that you have come from the login page or not. So by the end of these two lectures, we have pretty much discussed all different kinds of password cracking attacks that are possible. There are two types of passwords that I've purposely skipped, which we will be discussing later on in this course. The first kind of password that I skipped is Linux passwords. So we discussed how to crack Windows login passwords, but we did not discuss how to crack Linux or Unix passwords. But later on in this course, when I discuss backtrack, I'll be teaching you how you can track or how you can crack backtrack login passwords or Linux-based login passwords as well. Then another type of password that I have not discussed purposely is Wi-Fi cracking passwords. How to crack somebody else's WEP, WPA, and WPA2 password. Again, like I mentioned earlier, there's going to be a separate lecture on that towards the end of the AFCH course, because Wi-Fi cracking is a very complicated topic. It's not something that you can easily execute. So I wanted to cover a lot of the basic attacks first before we get on to the highly technical and sophisticated attack, which is WEP, WPA, and WPA2 password cracking attacks. So on that note, I'll probably have to end the lecture. We are ending around 5 minutes early, but I don't want to start a new topic because we won't be able to do justice to it. In the next lecture, we will continue discussing other types of attacks that are possible. We have a bunch of different types of attacks that we still need to cover, like SQL injection, DOS attacks, DDoS attacks, cross-site scripting, phishing attacks. We'll probably end up discussing buffer overflows, metasploit, shell attacks, remote shell, bind shell, backtrack, Wi-Fi cracking, if we get time, ARP poisoning as well. So the next few lectures are going to be really exciting. I sincerely hope that all of you are enjoying the course so far. We're kind of at the midpoint now. We have kind of covered 16 hours of training, in this course. And think about it, in the 16 hours only, we have discussed so many different topics. So I hope all of you have enjoyed the course so far. The next 16 hours will be much, much better than the first 16 hours because we'll be discussing more technical, more advanced hacking techniques than ever before. So until the next time, this is Ankit Fadia signing off.